Let me see if he finally posted it. He did! Alright. Let's watch, everybody.
It is April the 5th, 2024. A killer I love is receiving massive sweeping changes, and I'm begging Behaviour's design team to change course. It is September the 17th, 2024. A killer I love is receiving massive sweeping changes, and I'm begging Behaviour's design team to change course. It is March the 24th, 2025. A killer I love is receiving massive sweeping changes, and I'm begging Behaviour's design team to change course. Time is a flat circle, and I'm getting really quite sick of this now. The Skull Merchant design preview is here, and let me just start by saying I'm glad they previewed this now. It gave us plenty of time to give feedback and give them time to listen to it and respond in the design stage. It gives us a bit of peace of mind that the wheels of Behaviour are turning. We're not just getting strung along for 3 years like we were with the Twins rework. But it also means critical design problems can be caught well before a PTB. Because if a bad rework makes it to the PTB, it's really hard to get the brakes slammed on completely. It's only ever happened once, when the Twins rework was so catastrophic it would have killed DBD if it ever hit live servers. And for this rework,
If I remember correctly, yeah, I think the way that they buffed the Twins once upon a time for PTB, they buffed them so much, like they were going to be the #1 killer of DBD. Like they would have actually beaten Nurse if the changes went through. But hey, don't worry, it didn't. It didn't. Along with like, I forgot what tweak they did with Huntress. Oh, I think it was mainly just making her base speed of 115, and everyone's like, no, that's too powerful. Like, all right, we're sorry, fine, yeah, we'll put her back to 110. And now, in my opinion, they should just give Spirit the base movement speed. But anyways,
I'm particularly glad we got a design preview, because it's such a fundamental shift in how the killer works and plays. This is exactly the kind of thing you should be running by the community first, before it ever reaches the PTB. When we're talking about effectively deleting a killer's power and replacing it with a totally different one, that's the kind of thing you should be consulting players on. So that we can ask what the bloody hell is going on. So, what the bloody hell is going on? So, a loose summary of the power.
Question.
Merchant now has 5 drones, which when placed vibe in the environment as stealth drones. They have 2 vision cones, one at the front, one at the back, and they spin round. They're not scan lines, honest, they got rid of those apparently. After being in the environment for a short time, the Skull Merchant can take control of one of those drones, turning herself undetectable and being able to effectively steer it around like an RC helicopter. This drone will move slightly faster than her movement speed, and will consume battery power as long as you're controlling it, consuming more if you're moving. When controlling a drone, you can charge up a drone propulsion dash attack that will send the drone surging forward in a straight line and dealing a hellstack damage if it hits a survivor. If this dash hits a survivor or the terrain, the drone breaks and returns to Skull Merchant's inventory. She has a secondary power too, a global tracking power that hasn't really got a name yet. When you activate it, each survivor will have a brief warning before the whole map is scanned, and any survivor who is currently sprinting will have their location pinged to the Skull Merchant on her radar. The same radar that will detect any player who is scanned by one of the drone's scan lines. Detection zones. And that's about it. There's not really much to this power, and that was very much by design. A huge thing Behaviour is pushing for was simplifying the power. And while I might think they've oversimplified it a little bit, we will get into that later, they have certainly done that job. The first immediate comparison I think you can make here is Twins. An independent little scouting threat with a mixture of information, lethality and map pressure. It's been done before, and with a killer I've always had a soft spot for. But the closest thing I can compare to this power is nothing in Dead by Daylight. Died in 2023, born in 2025. Welcome back, Dollmaster from VHS. Straight up, one thing I'm a big fan of on paper is maintaining and perhaps even doubling down on the Trap Killer playstyle. You can't control the drone as soon as you put it down, meaning that shitter drone is going to be difficult. But without clear numbers, we don't know how difficult. And since the drone will apparently be faster than base speed and presumably fly and dash over resources, I don't think it's going to matter too much. Because a fast-moving drone with a dash attack now means you may not be able to leave a tile without getting hit, but then you're also staying at a tile with a fast-flying thing that can dash around and hit you over pallets, or, as we call it in the industry, Flying Victor. We will come back to this later. Mobile drones, at least on paper, are an idea I can also appreciate. Letting them get where they need to go by themselves feels right for drones. And when SM 2.0 didn't get moving drones either, I assumed we'd never see the light of day. But we have it now, and at least on paper, I do like it. It's honestly one of the major missed opportunities concerning twins. Using Victor to control an area is a pretty cool thing to do, but he's so good in chase and little limited in his surveillance that the game kind of discourages you from playing him that way. I'm glad to see Merchant 3.0 taking this idea and running with it a little bit more. But let's talk about the specific kind of movement these drones have, because I'm not going to beat around the bush. Yippee, they've just made another dash killer again, and they really need to calm the fuck down with those. We've just had 3 killers in the past 3 chapters whose entire goal seems to be power creeping Albert Wesker. The last thing we need is a killer whose skill expression is extremely different from every other killer, flattened down into the Weskerification machine where moving fast into a survivor to hit them is a be-all and end-all of your skill expression. We definitely didn't need more killers whose primary engagement with a survivor is zooming up to them and then bat-revving them to death. And make no mistake, that's exactly how this is going to go. Because if the drone's only method of attack is crashing into survivors in a dash, then that's going to have some problems.
I'm sorry, but it would look funny to me. just, I'm sorry. Just summoning up a little drone, and it's cruising, down some area, just like, woohoo, and then all of a sudden, a Neo just runs across it. I'm sorry. Sorry. To me, it would look absolutely hilarious. I'm sorry.
Side note, I actually came up with a power like this myself for Skull Merchant back in her 1.0 days, but I don't think it was as interesting as the scanline system that we eventually got. The system that we are losing for this drone dash attack, and it's a lot more lore-friendly too. It's definitely more fitting for an egomaniac technocrat billionaire to implant a torture bracelet into your arm and track you down with it than it is to just crash her custom-built, carefully made drone with a real human skull built into it. It's
like, you know what, forget y'all. It literally throws the drone at you. I'm sorry, but that's hilarious to me. Yeah, definitely not lore-friendly in my opinion, but it'd be funny.
Smashing it into you like a bottle on the end of a ship. Yeah, I was a fucking dumbass when I wrote that one up. Let's talk about the only other power in the game that forces you to use dash attack, and that's Victor. Victor is really fast. 150% speed-based kit and faster with add-ons, and that speed is what makes him so oppressive. He catches up really easily, he can play any tile. He's just a little terror, really, but he has to be. He needs to be that quick, because if he wasn't, he would be infinited around small rocks and trees. He wouldn't be able to turn the corner, wind up his power, and go for a pounce before the survivor made it back around the edge to avoid his back rev. Drones would have this issue too, but perhaps even worse, because they have a limited battery life when moving, so they'd have to be super fast to be able to catch you in time if you hugged a small obstacle. But if they're 150% or quicker like Victor, that means that each drone has a 150% speed dash power that can take any health state and flies over windows or pallets. Do you have any idea how oppressive that chase power would be? That's a bat-form Dracula with a machete, and she's got 5 other fuckers. There's no way to make the drone speed balanced here. It's either so fast that you just receive death by back for nothing that you can do, or it's slow enough that the killer's power becomes useless if there's a tree nearby. The preview does say it's slightly faster than Merchant's base speed, so maybe I'm wrong on this one, but I don't easily see a way to work around this problem that stops the drone being infinited around random obstacles unless they just jack the speed up to the point it becomes Backrev Simulator. Yeah. If there's a solution Behaviour has in mind for Backrev Boris over here, I'd like to see what it entails. And that's just one of the problems that this proposed design inherits from Twins. This killer will be obnoxiously good at slugging, because she can leave a drone on top of a slug. Against Merchant 2.0, this was not really a big deal, because you could crouch up to it and hack it, or just pick the survivor up and ignore it since you were standing still. But in this case, she can check on the slug by going back to controlling the drone whenever she wants.
At least she has her own deer stalker. I think that's what the perk is called. At least we won't really, at least people won't be hiding anywhere, and hopefully hook them. But that would make it even worse on the killer if they decide not to hook them.
And the drone can down you. So if you're injured going for that pickup, you're just going to have to join them on the floor. It's like leaving Victor to guard a slug, except there's 4 other Victors somewhere on the map locking down areas and applying additional pressure.
That would be scary.
Do you have any idea how obnoxious that's going to be once players get good at it? Especially with something like Force Penance. This is just Twins on crack, with all of the jank and irritating hard counter that Twins already have too. Like, did you realise this design preview says nothing at all about lockers? If you hide in a locker, I guess you're just maybe immune to the drone completely, That's something that they could maybe sort out before a PTB, but there's a bigger problem, and that's the anti-slug perks, even more so than twins. Because Merchant would be routinely downing survivors a good distance from her, meaning she has to walk across the entire map to get a pickup once the drone takes them down. But, Wiglif exists, Flip-Flop Power Struggle exists, Exponential exists. If survivors can pick themselves up or make themselves unhookable before you can get the down and the pickup, they can erase a web of traps without fear, because you can't down them profitably and you can't let them take the drones out because you'll lose your web and get your aura revealed to boot. Anti-slug perks will cripple this killer. And it's not even like twins where Victor can down somebody and then start chaining to somebody else to spread the pressure out to mitigate this. You use a drone once and it's done. You got your hit with your power, and then, because they brought the funny perks, you just didn't get that hit. You used your drone up and moved across the map for nothing. It's the thing people hate about twins, but even less counterable, because, again, Victor can chain hits. Oh, and if it's consistent with twins and night, drones won't be able to travel through the portals on Forgotten Ruins either, so that's cool. But slugging is not the only potential risk this killer has of becoming completely obnoxious. It says on the preview that the stealth drone is controllable after a short period of time. How short? Because if it's too short, you can do an artist impression by just putting the drone down at a pallet or window and then zone the survivor into it while...
Oh no. Whatchamacallit, Wow, Skull Merchant. The artist version. Oh dear. What was I gonna say? It had to deal with, oh boy. It's like, well, the survivors need something else to do other than just, push out gens. Well, there's another thing to worry about. More drones that are oppressive. That'll give them something to deal with. But I can see this being a problem, though.
The drone is turning on. The activation window had to be pretty sizable to prevent Skull Merchant from just doing the artist thing, except with way more control over the thing that's zoning you. But I am saving the worst for last here. Because if I'm reading everything here correctly, and there's no secret source I'm missing, I think this design preview might just bring back Chess Merchant, or at least the impression of Chess Merchant that we've seen since the original. Yep, time really is a flat circle, and the trick here is in the cameras. Much like Skull Merchant 2.0, the scanning drone can't detect survivors who are sitting still on gens. But because your drones have cameras now, they don't have to. You can just manually check yourself by controlling your drones and monitoring the situation. The battery depletes when you're controlling, but apparently slower than when the drone is moving. So unless the batteries are really shit, you should be able to hold your drones for a good amount of time. And since you're holding a Type 3 gen, it shouldn't be too time consuming to replace your drones if one of them is running out of power. You check your gens with your drone cameras and wait for someone to try to touch one. Somebody injured hops on a gen, that's a free down and a hook in the middle of your 3 gen. Somebody healthy hops on a gen, you smash a drone into them and you head over. This will force them off, after which you replace the drone. You have 2 drones left, so you keep one in your pocket in case of emergencies and to replace any ones that die, and use the other one to disrupt resets, so you can use force penance to force survivors to stay injured, prolong resets, or force them to stick to generators while injured. Meaning any drone nearby can give you a hook in the middle of your 3 gen. Or a slug with a drone camping the body if you prefer. Even hacking the drones won't immediately help you because all that does is tell the merchant which gen you're at, so she can chase you off and immediately replace that drone again. I do want to maintain, we don't know any of this for certain without the ability to playtest. But based on the information that we have, I am very, very concerned. The drone speed will have to be kept low to stop it devolving into Backrev Boris. The battery life will have to be kept low to mitigate the 3 gen problem, and the activation buffer before you can control the drone will have to be kept long to stop the artist thing from happening, which means the power is going to be incredibly hard, if not impossible, to make decent, because being generous with her numbers will make her absolutely insufferable in some capacity. Maybe they can balance it, maybe they can't, but it is a serious point of concern. It reminds me a lot of the Twins rework, honestly, although nowhere near as obviously broken. I remember when they got that dev update in March last year, and just like I am now, I was crashing out. I was tearing my hair out about what had been done to my killer. And there's quite a few people...
I know that feeling all too well, as I still mourn the loss of Pig.
...out there who were telling me a year ago that I was overreacting about Twins. The killer that turned out so broken that the rework never made it off the PTB.
At least when they killed off Pig, everyone's like, yo, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that, Behavior? Why'd you do that? That wasn't necessary. Why'd you do that?
The same people are telling me now that I'm overreacting to Merchant and that we should just wait to play instead of being worried about what we can read. I'm not being rhetorical here, it's literally the same people in the same situation exactly a year after the first time this happened. The first time they told me I was overly negative, but turned out to be right on the bloody money. Call me Cassandra, because I feel like I'm living in the nonsense dimension. Why is nobody else worrying about this stuff? But let's ignore the part of the power that throws a flying toaster at you for a second and talk about the...
What? Although that is essentially what you're doing, literally throwing a toaster at them. But the reason why I don't care too much is mainly because, well, I don't really play Skull Merchant. I don't know the ins and outs of her. So, yeah, I just kind of leave y'all to deal with it because you're the experts. I don't think I will add to the conversation other than just, I guess, telling you the fear of playing her because the community is nasty.
The other big element emphasised by the power, the recon and info it provides. A lot of Merchant players, especially like old Merchant players, celebrated a return to a more information-heavy power, but the more I read it and understood how this would work in a match, the more I realised how this was kind of a poison chalice. The key to Merchant's tracking without needing aura reading or killer instinct was the radar. But with this new version of Merchant, I don't think the radar has ever been less important. Now that you can just monitor the drone's cameras yourself, there's very little need to ever use the radar beyond just telling you, man this drone. If you're going to be checking an area regularly, you'll be using the control system more than the radar anyway. And you can think again about using the radar in chase very much. If a survivor is scanned in a tile with you, that means the drone that scanned them is probably in that tile as well, and you'd be better served smashing it into them instead of trying to play the M1 game. The only time it will get you consistent information is when the global tracking ability goes off and starts marking survivors, except, wait, when is that even useful? The survivors can ignore that tool by standing still, meaning survivors doing gens or resetting, you know, the things you want to stop survivors doing and use tracking tools to find them when they're doing, will be immune to the power that's designed to track them. This is such arse-backwards design, I can't stand it.
So basically, it would encourage survivors to play immersive, which is one of the most boring gameplays, okay? But, oh dear.
But I guess it'll give you radar pings in chase, so that's something. But if you really want that, just run eyemore lead or Ancient Tactics or something. It'll give you better chase auras more consistently without needing to pull out your iPad to check them. Claw Traps, the system they removed to simplify Slow Motion 3.0, solved this problem pretty elegantly. They stick to you for a long time regardless of whether or not you're in chase, whether you're doing a gen or not. It gives her tracking when she needs it and means you're more vulnerable to her than you might think even when you're AFKing on a gen. They removed claw traps for apparently being too complicated and replaced it with an arguably just as complicated system that is less consequential, doesn't depend on the killer doing well to use it, and is broadly worse at basically everything because the counterplay to getting found is doing things that make the killer want to find you. Awesome job promoting that tracker playstyle, guys. So, yeah, in case you can't tell by my tone, this rework is a resounding success. Aside from the fact that the drone's chase will be impossible to balance, the killer instantly loses to anti-slug perks, drones left on slugs will be hilariously oppressive and annoying for solo queue players, the power stops working around lockers, the radar doesn't do anything, the global tracking system is an ineffectual gimmick shoved in to give survivors a cute minigame, the reward for successful hacks is too high, and the punishment for a failed hack is actually weaker than current Merchant's hack punishment, despite the rework allegedly pushing for a more high-risk, high-reward approach to hacking. Apart from all of that, this rework is practically perfect in every way. Yeah, who am I kidding? It's a total shit show. If this was a brand new...
It's like it'd be... It's like it's good, but at the same time, it's not Skull Merchant. It's somebody else. The whole throwing drones at people, it's not exactly lore-friendly, from my understanding. So, it's like, bruh, why'd you do that?
Killer dropped onto a PTB, it would be a laughingstock. A killer who can effortlessly protect slug survivors from anywhere on the map, but also gets her power completely deactivated by the magic of a locker. A killer whose long-range tracking tool is so inconsistent that you can stop the killer finding you by doing the thing the killer wants to find you doing. I played the Twins PTB back in late 2020. I know what happens when a killer who needed more time in the oven hits, and let me tell you, it's definitely not a balance between being fun to play as and against. It's a
Right,
power
yeah.
that everyone will forget about more or less instantly, and they'll probably demand another rework due to low play rate in a couple of years anyway. You know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm somehow reading all this wrong. But this really does just feel like Twins accept that drones chase is more oppressive than Victors at the cost of not being able to chain hits. But even if they iron out every single gameplay problem with this rework, which, yeah, fat chance, I still don't like the rework. Because it's all but deleting my favourite killer in the game and replacing it with something entirely alien that's much less special, much less fun, and without the unique learning curve and ways of thinking that she brought with her in her previous iteration.
Exactly.
We might not be 100% sure about the exact details of what we're getting in the event that the design preview reaches the PTB, but we do know what we are losing to get it. The loss of the scan and stack system is the biggest disaster of the rework by far because it characterised Merchant 2.0's gameplay with a mechanical core that gives the character a lot of depth and microplay related skill expression. Merchant has always been about smart decision making and using the drone's information to be in the right place at the right time, but Scanline Merchant also has a surprising amount of mechanical depth. If you don't believe it, I have 2.5 hours of a guide to show you.
But it's helpful too. I can attest to it.
Messing around with the scan lines are one of the major driving forces behind the killer's fun factor. Laser tagging can give some incredible skill expression and precision in her shots, and rotation timing is a completely unique form of skill. I don't want to go to manipulating a laser beam with pinpoint precision to the DVD equivalent of throwing a brick at the survivor's house.
I'm sorry. Just seeing this, where it's just like you're scanning them and nothing's happening, and you're just like, and then you just throw a tantrum, and then you throw the drone. You know what? Forget your running. Forget your looping. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's to me it's funny, but yeah, like I understand how this can be a problem, and yeah, the behavior should listen to these skull merchant mains here.
No other killer interacts with survivors in the same way Merchant does. Nothing else really gets to come close. Behaviour knows this, and we know Behaviour knows this because when they shipped Merchant 2.0 from PTB's Alive, they added both these mechanics in to give her more depth, and they've been well received by her players. And when he gutted her at 8.3.0, the only compensation they gave us was a shorter scanline immunity window, a stat that only matters if you're doing rotation shenanigans in the first place because it lets you double scan more effectively. The changes Behaviour have made to Merchant were done in part to highlight and reward this, and the players she's accumulated have grown to love these features. So why did they get rid of them? They know we like them, so the only reasonable explanation here is that they don't care that we like them. Let's be clear here. This is
Yeah, that's the impression that I'm getting too. They don't care that you like the killer. Although I do find it interesting that they have rolled back the nerfs for the Xeno, so I wonder what they're gonna do with Skull Merchant. If they're actually gonna listen to the mains, like the Skull Merchant mains, and actually do something about it, or are they just gonna be like, screw y'all, kamikaze, drones, yeah, uh, yeah. Only time will tell with this one.
multiple core mechanics that have made the killer fun for a lot of
But I really do hope that devs continue to listen to the people that actually play the game and shows and the mains they show you how beneficial it is, not just for the killer but also for the whole game and also for the survivors themselves, because they do take into account on the survivor side, like if it's an absolute pain and misery to go against the killer, or it's like, nah, this is tolerable, this is fine.
people ejected into space with no other killer those skills can be transferred to. It's like if Huntress's Hatchet's got a range cap tacked on and all your long shots, your orbitals, your lineups just didn't matter anymore. It's a huge, unnecessary nerf, and we all know Behaviour wouldn't have considered this as an option if Merchant was a more popular killer. In effect, they're removing the mechanics that make her special because they think there's not enough people who are going to miss them.
About to say, I'm like, they think, oh, no one will care, no one will miss them, people are hardly playing them. And, yeah, I think that was probably the same with Xeno. We're gonna do these nerfs, no one's gonna care, no one's really playing them. And then, they were wrong. And I think they are continued to be proven wrong. No, people do care.
If I was a cynical man, I'd go so far as to say that the comprehensive gutting that Skull Merchant received back in October was a way to diminish and alienate the Merchant player base to the point that we would accept Behaviour removing our favourite killer from the game and replacing her with a whole new killer instead.
put in Predator. That's what she is. I mean, she's a ripoff of Predator. Sorry. Like, dude, if they gave her a Predator skin, that would be absolutely amazing. And yippee ki there's like Alien and Predator finally at the same time in the game, which would be so cool. That would be insanely amazing, but alas.
Because the alternative would be leaving her as all but unplayable forever, making us choose between a useless Skull Merchant and no Skull Merchant at all. Fortunately, if there's one trait I'm never known for, it's my cynicism. And this is particularly exhausting because this is not behaviour's typical approach to reworking killers. Throughout DBD's long history of rebalancing reworking killers, they've always made sure to keep a fair amount of the character intact so that the people who always enjoyed them still can. Trickster and Onryo both had their changes rebuilt as compromises between the designers' new visions for the character and the elements that their players already loved about them. I'd like to know why Skull Merchant hasn't had that luxury. Hell, Onryo's entire second rework was done to bridge the gap and win back more long-term Onryo fans who'd abandoned the killer after the first rework, and it worked. Onryo is in the best state she's ever been because you mix the new design intentions of the killer with the classic elements of the character that her players loved.
Yeah, she is fun to play with. She doesn't feel terrible or anything. She is fun to play with.
Merchant deserves that too. If nothing else, because there's a risk this might happen again and you might have to line up Merchant for a fourth rework because her old player base abandoned her and a new one hasn't filled the void. You have a loyal player base who is stuck with the killer through thick and thin, who wants to stay with this killer, wants to be given a good reason to. Why are you so reluctant to embrace what we love about her?
Yeah, that's what I don't understand with some of these developers. It's like the players, like your clients are telling you what they want, and they're just going the opposite direction. I literally, I do not understand. I don't understand why developers do that. It's like, no, you have to listen to your clients, your customers. Like, you want more money? Listen to the customers, and you're gonna get more money than whatever external third party would offer you. Because the long run is when the player base likes you, they'll keep giving you money and you'll keep lasting. Like,
more than anyone else, we should be the people catered to by these changes the most. The people who don't like Skull Merchant have 38 other killers they can enjoy instead. They don't lose anything by having a killer that doesn't work for them. But the people who do like her are losing something if the rework to her causes her to leave their killer pool.
yeah, that's the thing. It's like, well, yeah, they're losing their favorite killer, and I understand. It's like, dude, yeah, continue to fight because, dude, my favorite killer, it's, she's at the bottom. Yeah, yeah, continue to fight, and hopefully you have better luck than what Pig had.
If you care at all about the existing player base of any killer, there needs to be some concessions made for reworks to keep as much of the identity as.
And yeah, you can also thank all the survivor perks that just makes her absolutely irrelevant.
As is reasonable, especially when it comes to core mechanical skill expression that makes the character who she is. If, say, Xenomorph got reworked and the tail attack didn't work the way it always has, it would suck, but there are several other killers that you can play if you like that mid-range owner playstyle. But there's only one killer who can time the rotation of a tiny-ass beam to catch people out as they move around. It's a totally unique way to play the game, and it's heartbreaking that unless the design preview changes quickly, we might just lose it forever. And the best bit is, I know beyond any doubt that behaviour does have the capacity to listen to us.
They do. They really do. I mean, like what happened with Xeno recently. They do listen. Hence why I get frustrated whenever they refuse and just go to whatever, I don't know, whatever nearly brain dead decision that they deal with. I mean, like, I don't understand. It's like, yeah, they do make it clear that they do listen. They are there. It's just sometimes the decisions that they make, it tends to be, there are times where it's just the wrong decision. And it gets discouraging.
When I talk about Merchant, it tends to get to them, one way or another. And I can prove that, because after being in the game for almost 18 months, Compass Tech didn't get patched out until 2 weeks after I made my video talking about it.
Oh.
And that's something that I and the other merchant players I spoke to working on this guide kind of anticipated. Do you really think I would put Compass Tech in my video if I wasn't on some level aware that behaviour might patch it out? After speaking with the merchant players who cracked the tech and told me everything about it, we reasoned that behaviour removing Compass Tech was the worst case scenario, but it had two compelling potential upsides. They might fix her other bugs alongside it and make the experience of playing her overall better, which they're at least trying to do in the Kaneki race by patching out the static drone bug. But the other reason I'm chill with Compass Tech going away is that it proves beyond any doubt that behaviour does listen, that my voice isn't falling entirely on deaf ears. When it comes...
Not entirely, but usually it does. I'm sorry. I'm what's that word? Cynical. I'm pessimistic. There it is. I'm pessimistic about this.
When it comes to fixing a tech, behaviour has used what I've said and the work of the Skull Merchant community to help them patch it out. You guys have demonstrated the ability to listen to Skull Merchant players when it comes time to patch out a tech that we worked hard to find, because we bug tested the killer more thoroughly than you ever have. You've listened before, and now more than ever, we need you to listen again.
Yes.
I freely admit here, what I'm talking about is a tall order. At different points in time, Skull Merchant has been in effect.
It's like, bro, give me more fun options, more fun killer options, man.
3 different killers, all with different elements they did well and elements they failed in. Blending together the old, the new, and the really old isn't exactly what I would call
really old,
or making a cohesive, balanced, and engaging power. But my autism works faster than a Blake player on a near-lethal dose of Adderall. So let me show you what I would do in your position, combining all 3 eras of Skull Merchant into a final, admittedly pretty complex iteration. I call it the Neapolitan, because, well, everyone's got their favourite flavour, and this mix might not be for everybody.
Isn't that Spumoni? By the way, Spumoni's good, but anyways, isn't that Spumoni though? Well, is it also called the Neapolitan? I'm actually kind of curious now. Dang it. I'm sorry. I really like Spumoni. I think that's how you spell it. It is called... Oh. But yeah, okay, so it is also called the Neapolitan. Oh. Oh, hey, I call it Spumoni. But anyways, crapper is it?
But at the end of the day, I think it's still pretty fucking sweet. Skull Merchant carries 6 drones that have 3 states: Recon mode, Stealth mode, and Scouting mode. Drones deploy in Recon mode. You press M2 to deploy a drone in the direction Skull Merchant is facing. Recon drones will fly forward automatically at 200% speed. Instead of the beam, the drone will emit an active zone within 10 meters of the drone. Any survivor who moves within the active zone will be revealed on the radar for as long as they're in it.
I will say, what would be interesting is if you try to you operate the drones like how the knight throws out their minions. Like, that would be interesting. Oh, but then again, then that might make knight irrelevant a little bit. If they make the drones faster than 115, but then again, yeah, one of the minions is over 115. Yeah, this is a complicated one.
And for 12 seconds lingering afterwards. But they will not receive any further debuffs. At the end of its path, a recon drone will fly back to the killer at 200% speed. When a drone is in flight, selecting it on the radar will cause the drone to stop moving and enter stealth mode. This can only be done after a few seconds of travel, you can't do it instantly. This is the application of the whole moving drones idea from the design preview. How the drones move is entirely up to you. I'm thinking giving them free movement might be a bit much, but I like the idea of a path-finding system in some capacity. It could be like Howmaster's search mode, where you pick a point and the drone paths towards it by the shortest possible route. It could be like a Freddy snare, where it flies straight through the environment until it hits max range. You could draw a path like a Night Guard, or it could even be like Howmaster's chase command, where it travels in a straight line but slides around the environment until it reaches its maximum range. And such a max range, I imagine, could be huge. Far longer than a night path, because this is your means of both surveying the map and
Oh, good. He's talking about night. Good.
setting up traps. When a drone enters stealth mode, you gain control of it for 8 seconds. It can't move during this time, but you control the orientation and scan... oh, sorry, I can't call that anymore. Detection-facing beam will appear on a crosshair. Press M1 to lock the drone's orientation. Any survivors in the beam when the orientation is locked will receive 3 immediate lock-on stacks. Yep, 3. That's a full claw trap, baby. If 8 seconds passes or you cancel the power, the drone returns to your inventory. Stealth mode drones will remain where they are locked in place, not rotating and projecting the invisible beam in the direction they were oriented. When a survivor moves through a stealth mode beam without crouching, they gain a lock-on stack and the drone enters scouting mode. The idea here is to combine 2 critical parts of Merchant 2.0 in a more natural feeling way. Trap drones and laser tagging. The primary use case here is remote surveillance and trap placement. You send a drone somewhere, it doesn't spot anyone, so you stop it at the spot you want it to stay in and choose the direction the beam will face in. The drone then gets survived there as a tripwire until the drone is disabled, recalled, or enters scouting mode. But there's a fun little minigame if the recon driver spots someone as it's moving. As soon as you spot someone on the radar, that's your opportunity to switch to the drone and take a quick laser shot before they can react. If you miss it, you pay a steep cost. You've wasted sending a drone where you wanted it to go and they might disable it before you can get there, which is why giving it a full claw trap and ignoring crouching or standing rules applies for the particular beam. It's higher risk, higher reward, and maybe you could have some nice sound and visual effects to go along with it. Imagine a big red beam or a fucking siren or something to highlight the survivor they messed up, that the killer is coming for them and they best get out of dodge before you decorate the trials with their internal organs. Speaking of internal organs, let's talk about scouting mode.
And that's why I use Lightborn.
Scouting mode drones rotate 110 degrees per second clockwise, and any survivor scanned by a beam who isn't crouching or standing still receives a lock-on stack. Yeah, that's just current scouting mode.
What? Wait, so scouting mode drones rotate clockwise at 110 degrees per second. What? Any survivor scanned by a beam who isn't crouching or standing still receives a lock-on stack. When Skull Merchant recalls a stealth or scouting drone, she gains the undetectable for 10 seconds.
Mode, really. And survivors can hack or interact with stealth or scouting drones and perform a minigame to hack the drone for a minimum of 45 seconds. Once this period is over, which will cause the drone's aura to flash yellow, the Skull Merchant can either recall the drone or reorient it, putting it back into stealth mode and resetting the beam, putting it back into stealth mode and reselecting the beam's direction. The scouting and disabled states are much the same as they are in current day Merchant. Scouting drone spits out 1 beam really fucking fast and takes 3 scans to claw trap you, and the killer can switch between rotation directions to do this faster. You can crouch or stand still to dodge the beams, da. And you disable the same way as well, with the same 45-second time limit. But the big difference here is you have to manually rearm a disabled drone yourself before you can use it again. That is a feature that Merchant 1.0 had that I thought was pretty elegant. It forces you to constantly interact with your power to maximise drone uptime, and I think that's a cool feature that makes it distinct from Singularity. Plus, if stealth mode drones are the ones turning back on, you'll need to set up a tripwire direction, so a manual reactivation gives you the means to manually pick your direction when automatic reset doesn't let you do that. Lock-on stack and claw trap mechanics work broadly the same way too. Each survivor has up to 3 lock-on stacks. Have 3 lock-on stacks, they get a claw trap, which will injure them if they're healthy or deep wound them if they're injured. Survivors cannot receive a lock-on stack within 2.25 seconds of receiving the last one, and claw traps will break survivors until they fall off, which is either until they go down or within 45 seconds, whichever comes first. Survivors scan while claw trap will mark with killer instinct for 3 seconds, and during this time the Skull Merchant can press space while radar is out to instantly shock the marked survivor, disabling all interactions 2.5 seconds and causing them to scream. This will consume 15 seconds of the claw trap's battery. Last but not least, let's talk about the radar. Skull Merchant can use the radar for a number of functions. Holding the radar up reveals the locations of all survivors scanned or claw trapped, and the auras of all drone beams within 32 meters. In addition, the radar can be used to highlight drones in different states to cause different effects. Documented with the relevant keybinds here. The radar can also be used to activate Neuroshock from the spacebar where appropriate. Yes, before anyone says anything, this is extremely complicated if you don't already know what Merchant does, but let's be real here.
Yeah.
A lot of this is modification from Merchant's existing kit. A lot of stuff changes, but a lot of it stays the same as well, so people won't have to relearn a bunch of new stuff from scratch to get used to her. SM 3.0 is an entirely new killer that everyone will have to relearn all over again.
Oh, give me a sec, super quick. Crap, where'd it go? and then I'll change it when things are ready.
Plus, the global tracking is a really counterintuitive tool and will only do anything when it punishes bad players who don't know how it works. And I know even pitching a concept here is a wild thing to do. I know this whole thing has looked like some sort of desperate plea to make things right. The last bargain of the condemned killer. And that's because it is. I am desperate because I know I get laughed at for this every time I say it, but Skull Merchant is my favourite thing about Dead by Daylight. I boot up the game and I want to play her. I might play other characters like new killers I want to try out, recording stuff for videos, or if I'm hanging out with my friends playing Survivor, but I am almost never more satisfied with DBD than I am playing Merchant. And I don't want to see that disappear. And I've noticed in the weeks and months since the great nerfing happened that my desire to do so has gone down significantly. Every game feels like more of an uphill battle, especially since servs seem to think it's their divine mandate from God to bring the absolute most stacked shit known to man at the drop of a hat and play out their grandmother as being tortured in a garage every time they take a hit. But the brutalisation of Merchant since 8.3.0 hasn't pushed me towards any new killers to replace her. It's just pushed me to play less killer and less Dead by Daylight than I used to. By the time the grade reset comes, my Survivor grade is higher than my killer grade half the time. I just don't really feel that urge as much anymore, and it's not burnout, it's because you took my favourite thing in the game and put it through a meat grinder.
Exactly! Thank you! Thank you! It's like, either, like, yeah, you're going to play less Dead by Daylight, or you're basically kind of going to be like me, where it's like, I'm constantly searching of, like, which one's my main? That one's my main. I'm starting to prefer that one more. You know, I'll play Billy for a bit. Okay, I absolutely hate the survivors crouching, like, you know, doing the crouch tech. Okay, maybe Oni. Yeah, let's do Oni. Get a few bad games. I'm like, I want to play somebody else. Then it's like, oh, well, back to Legion. At least I know I have some fun, but they're not all that strong, and I want to win more often. So they're not exactly a reliable thing. So yeah, sure, Dracula is great. Don't get me wrong. It's just you'll be in a weird spot. You'll be in a weird killer main spot. Like, you won't exactly have a go-to. You'll just be all over the place. So, and that's kind of my thing to you. Well, I don't know if advice is the right word. More of like, well, my experience to you, sir.
And now you're trying to, what, serve it back up to me after you've pulverized it to the point it's not even my killer?
Yeah, here's your new dinner. It's disgusting. Ew. Ew. Get that away from me.
Anymore? I would say that you can't do that, but that's the thing. You can do that. There's nothing that I or anybody else can do to stop you, except implore you to reconsider and try and push you towards a better way of doing things. So where does this leave us? Right now, it's looking pretty bad.
Yeah,
this
we're
rework
at
is
a
a
bad
demolition
crossroads.
of Skull Merchant as a killer and the replacement with something else. Something far less unique.
It's like you're going to witness her being butchered again for, what, the second time? Second, if not third time?
Memorable or special. We can't really tell how good or bad it is just from the preview, how fair or unfair or fun or unfun it might turn out to be for any individual player. The only way to be sure is to put it on a PTB. But let me tell you this. If it makes it to a PTB, it's already too late for us. The killer's grave will have been dug. It's over. It's done. And there's probably no going back unless we were to get a PTB Twins level catastrophe. This idea for this
either Twins level or Huntress level catastrophe where they're like, ooh, let's roll back on the changes.
Work has to be scrapped, or at least heavily reconsidered. I'm sorry about the crash out, by the way.
Don't apologize. I have crashed out quite a few times with Dead by Daylight. Yeah, besides them gutting my killer. Like, dude, dude, don't apologize. I understand.
Just really, really tired of this.
Me too, brother.
I've tried so hard for so long to help guide this killer, the players who love her, and the devs responsible for her to the best of my ability. And right now, I'm just feeling like a bit of a failure. Nothing I've made in the past year and a half has made the slightest little bit of difference. You've pulled those straight through it like it doesn't even exist. And right there, clear as crystal, you admit it.
Wait, what'd they say? Give me a sec. Those last 2 points, it may be particularly difficult to hear for long-time school merchant mains, but we feel it's important to be clear about our intentions here. While the future we envision for Skull Merchant is quite different from her previous iterations, we feel this rework brings some exciting new tools of torment to the table. They're willingly ignoring the community! Well, the experts in particular, which is the worst community to ignore. No, the people that will actually help you make the game and the killer better. They're doing it again! Oh, that's heartbreaking. Pixelbush, sit next to me. It's like, dude, as Pig is on the bench. Yeah, Skull Merchant might join. Skull Merchant might join Pig on the bench. Well, either that or pretty much like it might be like how survivors are getting tired of Nurse or Blight, possibly Hillbilly. They are probably getting tired of those killers because they see them the most often, and it's just like, but dude, they are the killers that can handle your stupid crap more. Yeah, it sucks.
Merchant players will not like what this rework has to offer. How do you expect me to react? I said in my rework on...
They probably don't care. That's the sad part.
Skull Merchant's lore that this killer felt like a suit. Tailored just for me, but never quite fitting right. Over the years, it really started to feel like it was beginning to fit properly. She got a tome that massively improved her lore. She got some amazing new skin so that the slight issues in her base design didn't really matter anymore. And the SM...
Sorry, but her walk animation is a little janky. Yeah, it's beautiful, it's sexy, but it's a little... It doesn't exactly... Like, have her jogging a bit, I don't know. And sit... Oh. Yes? Well, I know, I'm almost done. Just give me a sec. I know, I will be there.
2.0 rework was a huge success that gave her more depth than I'd ever have guessed from that first PTB. The suit finally fit, and you spent the past half a year trying to tear it off me. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that on camera.
Please don't. Don't.
You guys don't need
No
to see
offense,
that.
but don't.
I just want my killer to still exist at the end of this year, and I am hoping that this makes enough of an impact that maybe, just maybe, behaviour will listen. It is a long shot, but it's the only hope I've got.
Yep.
Thank you for sticking around in this one. At the end of the day, I just want what's best for my favourite killer, and I hope my little crash out hasn't diluted the points I've been trying to make. Special thanks to all my friends and viewers who've reached out in the past 24 hours. You've helped me stay sane and get my thoughts in order while I try and make sense of everything and get it all down into a video.
Anyway.
Truth be told, I am scared of this rework hitting a PTB at some point because I see a lot of ways it could go wrong. And if it does, they're far more likely to turn the numbers down and ship it instead of going back to the drawing board, so that we're left with an anemic and unbuffable killer until they inevitably get around to her again. We can do better than this. We need to do better than this. And I'm hoping my feedback and everybody else's is reflected in behaviour.
I'm sorry, I stopped filling out the surveys. They don't listen to me.
Next steps for Skull Merchant. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ta-ta for now.
The one big way for me to know that they actually will listen to me in the surveys is if they actually change Pig's Mori, where basically for her new Mori, it would be she slaps a shotgun collar onto the survivor tries to get it off, but then it basically blows their head off. It blows their face off. Because one, that looks a lot better, a lot better Mori than just stab hands, slash your throat. That, and it's an Amanda Young touch to it. That pig in particular. It'd be so great. I know it'd be so great. But alas, this is behavior. This is Dead by Daylight we're talking about.